Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today I have an incredible guest, Lenora Johnson, on with us. She is coming in from the Pacific Northwest over in Oregon. She is a therapist. She specializes in trauma, grief, anxiety, depression, and maternal mental health. So we actually overlap on quite a few things, which is awesome. And she has been a participant in tons of health and human services, a lot of different agencies and programs. She really loves to create a safe, inclusive space for all folks to thrive. And we're just so excited to have her here today to talk about that very topic of thriving during the holidays, not just surviving. So welcome, Lenora. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate I always loving to talk to people in the busy season, right? It's kind of like we so look forward to the holidays. I always like to say it's a lot of hurry up and wait because between like January and May, that's it. Like there's nothing. And then you flip to the other side and it's a lot of hurry up and wait. I guess that's how I talk about pregnancy. The first 20 weeks is like, eh.
Yeah.
And then the last 20
And
weeks
you're
is
like,
like,
oh God. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love it. I love it. Well, I would love to maybe just start with the simple question of kind of what comes to mind when you think about thriving during this season of busy and all the things versus just surviving during it. And we'll kind of see where we go from there.
Excellent. Well, I think I like the word thrive, and it kind of hits me in all these weird places because when you hear it, it seems like it's driven, right? So I kind of think about that idea of like thrive, drive, kind of being on a mission of success. So when I think about survival, right, that word is kind of like you're holding on for dear life. And that's kind of the image we get when we hear survive. And thrive is more of that like boost. And the way I think about thriving is really feelings based. And I know that's super social worky, but in a way of feelings, they're always going to come up, right? So when you think about thriving, you usually come up with like some kind of happy emotions, I like to say, or like those feel goodies, because you think about how well I'm doing, the environment we might be creating for other that's positive and welcoming. And then survival, we kind of think about some bleak emotions. We think about that depression, the sadness, the anxiety that comes along. And the things I like to do is talk about how we feel things in our body. So if, let's say, Janet's name comes up, I always tell people to do a little body scan and know where you feel these things, right? So if you think about if something makes you sad and you think about where you feel sadness in your body, if it's in, right, my hands and heart and those things, and when you think about that person, you're like, oh, when I think about them, it makes me sad. It's like, okay, well, then we might need to have a different plan of action when we engage with them if we know they give us that juice back. So I always like to say, do a little mini feeling check-in. If you go around somebody and they make you feel like sunshine, then during the holiday season, make sure you plan to have at least a meetup or talk with them so that you can start to feel a little bit like sunshine. And that's the first little bit I do on my goal to say, let's thrive. The other one, me being a little bit of a introvert in this way. So I say I'm an introvert who comfortably extroverts.
Okay. I like that.
Get your downtime. Plan it in. It is not selfish. It is actually self-love to find time to recoup with no guilt. I always tell people, they're like, I'm sorry, I want to have some time to myself. I'm like, don't apologize for that. That's what we call the good juice. That's that good recovery. And if you take it, fill up your cup, get in there, get your movie going, enjoy you and Harry Potter if that's who you need to sit next to for a day, but get that in there. So those are just a couple of things when I think about the start of the Thrive, what I look for personally, and helps me restore, rejuvenate, and that's how I'm able to make it through the next moment. And I'm a Detroit girl, so the next way I talk about it is music, but let me see if there's anything you think about before I go into my favorite jams to be prepared for the holiday.
I love that. I can't wait for that. Two things that came to mind, just I love that idea of, we talk so much about setting boundaries during the holidays and like being thoughtful about scenarios that might come up or how to plan for them. But I really enjoy that extra layer of doing that sort of check-in, separately, where we don't have to use the word boundary. We're not talking about like what we're going to say to Uncle Steven when he says whatever. It's just in general, in my own private space, like what comes up, what comes to mind, how do I feel, and where, when I think about certain people that maybe we have to be around in a different way during the season, or maybe thinking about people we don't get to be around during the season. Like, what does that mean? And how do we plan for that? So I love that another approach to, I think, a very similar thread and theme, but I haven't really heard it described in that way. And I think that can be a really helpful in for some folks too, where maybe the others, it feels stickier or it's not as organic. The idea of setting a boundary feels mean or whatever else. So I love that description of how do we feel, and then more of that person, a different sort of way we're going to interact with that person, like whatever that was, come up with a plan after, right?
Exactly.
And then, I think a thought just left my head. What was the second thing you were talking about just now? We said the people and
the feelings, and let me see, girl, that magic just be coming. So I feel like it'll come back to us in that juice.
I was like, there's something so good there. Now I'm like, let's
just talk about how that's the holidays. Yes, let's just talk about that.
Introvert. Taking time for yourself. So yes, I think that's the other thing, is it's quality versus quantity. And I think it goes back to the shoulds. There's so many shoulds on the holiday season about like what TikTok said, or your mom and dad said, or your aunt and uncle, or your whoever, or your church, or your, I don't know, whatever community is telling you what's up. And I think just being able to slow down and say, okay, like I don't have to do all the things, and I'm not going to be able to make everyone else happy because their lists are different, but slowing down and having more quality self and presence at the things that you really want to intentionally show up at and spend that energy with. And then taking that permission slip to just slow down and be alone, or just be with your nuclear family, or whatever that like recharge looks like. They both are so needed, because if we're so burned out by the day Christmas Day or whatever holiday you celebrate during this time comes, then what's the point, right? Like, what was it all for? So I loved that just permission slip as well. I think I'm really big on giving that as well.
Absolutely. We have so much pressure to show up, and it's show up consistently that it doesn't allow for the restore. And so I have been laughing because I have been on this holiday, I guess I should say, superhero kick. So part of me and loving the hero story, in essence, is sometimes we don't want to be the bad guy. But when I talk about superheroes, if you imagine, and I tell people, I love The Dark Knight Rises, shout out to Christian Bale, that whole team. And so I'm going to slowly use a little bit of this in my example for how we recover. So when you think about superheroes, these folks, they put themselves out there, right? They mask up, they go into society, and they really go out there to save the day. So a building might get destroyed, or a bridge might get destroyed. And what happens? The superhero is the bad guy. You destroyed City Hall, you did this, but it's not necessarily, oh, you saved us so we can see tomorrow. And you stopped us from losing all the money that was gotten stolen out of the bank. But then you go to the villain. And the villains, the Jokers, the Lex Luthors, these bad guys, exactly. Who are they? They get to be just who they are. There's no added pressure. The Joker doesn't hurt everybody, but when he does take from some people, he's still the Joker. He gets to be everything as true to himself, or as they like to be, the poison ivies. They just get to be who they are. Comfortably. And they can surprise people or not. And so I thought about this story of sometimes it's okay to take on your villain era, because your villain era means you're giving yourself an opportunity to just be who you are and show up as is. And that may make some people uncomfortable. And you threw out one of my favorite words, which is boundaries, right? The boundaries that we allow for the villain to live in is their comfortability. We're not going to convince Joker to be a better guy. We'll convince Batman not to destroy a building because he'll get this bad stigma.
Right.
So understanding, right, you may need to just be your own superhero in your story and allow that villain to live, because that living comfortably is also a good side to tie right into that equation. And so I have told people, oh, okay, I can't show up for that. If that makes me a bad guy in your story, that's cool. It's not my story for me. My story for me is that I showed up so that I can live to see the next day, right?
Right,
That
right.
prioritizing me and making me my
Mm.
best person is letting me be my superhero and not be your superhero that needs to be
Whoever
carrying the
you
weight of
need
your
me to
story.
be.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I had a friend once describe boundaries as a way to actually deepen connection with others. It's not like separating or making a bigger division. The more authentically you show yourself to someone, the more they know you, and then the closer that you have the opportunity to become, right? And so I think that
Mhm.
hits so perfectly with this idea of the villains can just show up authentically. And so think of that as the boundary, right? Like, and no, not everyone's going to love it and it's not going to fit everyone else's story, but that's not the point. The point is you're still you in the story, right? Like we
Yep.
don't get surprised when Joker does something, whatever he does, because that's who he is. He's authentic. That's what we expect of him. And I think like that's a great, very interesting and great way to think about that of you're always going to be the villain in someone's story because we all have different
Mhm.
stories and different perspectives and needs and wants and so but don't be the one in your own.
There you go.
That's you
Exactly.
have the control over that part, so don't do that to yourself. So yeah, I love that analogy. That what a great visual when you think about it too.
Yeah. And I mean, I love it. I just, part of being who we are and generally thinking about things, like I think about budgets. That's another thing that hits me during the holidays. And
Mm.
we've had a lot of squeezing this year, right?
Yeah,
Crazy layoffs, like
yeah,
downsizing. Of course, all these things happen. And what do we get paralyzed by? How many people to buy gifts for?
yeah.
Right. And then that becomes our next barrel of the shame and guilt. And so, as a part of this discussion for how we lift that feeling off of us, is actually starting to prioritize what you'd like to do with people. And so, we underestimate experiences often, and we
Often.
will include that this is something because it tangibly looks like this you can do right now. And so, I've been talking to people about um, doing feel good activities that you can collect with people throughout the year, right? So, as we talk about the
Mhm.
hurry up and wait, let's take the pressure out the holidays because now we have done an activity that hits your joy meter in November. We've done a separate joy meter in October. And so when it comes to December, if we condition ourselves to say, wow, we've had this joy meter go off this time, this
Mm.
time, this time, now we're really taking the weight out of, do I have to have $1,000 in the bank to buy all of these things?
Right.
Or are you allowing this collective experience to be a part of our bankable time? And then we can
Mm.
use the holidays as memory tokens that we put that memory in the jar and then we talk about it at the holidays and the gift of reliving good things. Because I
Yeah.
know when I've been on dope vacations, rehashing those with the people I got to spend time with, I'm like, oh my gosh, do you remember
Yes.
when we did that? And
Yes.
now, without weight or pressure, we're reliving a good memory and bringing that into that holiday juice. And I think that is some of those things where keep experiences available. And
Hmm.
I do that one by I fell in love with the rebirth of the Polaroid minis.
Yes,
So
I have one.
growing up, yep, there's mine right there. So I
Yeah.
got my little Polaroid wall behind me. How many pictures do we take on our phone that we don't actually display anywhere?
Bazillion.
Bazillion. So what I started to do is take my little minis and I may take the printer with me when we go do an event or we're out doing something and I will print the pictures in real time and gift those to people.
Wow. Yeah.
So it lets us capture it right in the moment. And then I'm like, okay, we got 30 cute pictures. We have this many prints. What would we like to do? So everybody walks away with that little gift.
Mm-hmm.
And then I come home with one too. And I said, I'm done leaving pictures trapped in there for Apple to love, right? I
Yep.
want to have these memories for me to love. And so we need to start being seen and seeing what it is we do because we forget so quickly in this TikTok era, in this Reels era, that
Mm-hmm.
things are worth lasting and we
Mm-hmm.
should see them, not for the judgment of the comments, right? Like, but for the pick me up of
Yourself.
seeing it on my refrigerator.
Yeah. Yeah. And that connection and reminder of that. moment. Because I agree. I think we're in such a like the immediacy of everything, and the what's next is just like
Mm-hmm.
killing our souls, right?
Yep.
Because there's, like you said, there's such a full bank of really beautiful things that have happened. And yes, there's going to be more to come, but if we're not even present or able to enjoy, if we go just for the picture and then
Mm-hmm.
leave, like for Instagram or like what's that about, right? That isn't the
Exactly.
thing you're talking about 50 years from now to whoever, or in 2 months from now. Like those
Mm-hmm.
experiences and being present for them are the memories and are the things that keep on giving. So I love that. And whenever someone goes away, because I've moved a lot, people have moved, I always take the mini and a book, and then at the party, like everyone takes their picture with the person and then puts it in a book and like writes it right there. Because it's such a great gift. It's like better than a card. Well, cards are, I love cards, but like than just like 20 cards that
Exactly.
you like give all over the place, or other random gifts you don't need. And it's such a cool way to remember that day, that celebration, have those unique notes, force people who normally might not do that to like sit down and write something. So I love that idea of gifting in the moment pictures or memories of really fun things. I think it's so important. So
Yes. I love being able to revisit. So I think that for me is really a cool thing. Like you said, I do love cards, but it's the right. I don't love guilt in this way because it comes up. I always tell people it's my least favorite emotion. I wish it wasn't around, I would say.
yeah.
But what happens when you have to break up? And like you said, I like anxiety, grief, trauma, and depression are my jams. How sad is it when you have to throw away somebody's car because it's taking up space in
Yeah.
your move,
Yeah.
or you forgot it existed and you shoved it into something? And so
Mm-hmm.
I think allowing us to thrive, I just want to have more of this universally reachable
Yes.
condition.
Yes.
Because for me, I think about survival, it's like everybody's teeth in the bone, like everybody can attach to
Mm-hmm.
that. Thriving might seem unattainable because it's so high up for us that I want to make it as universal as, you know, sending somebody some cookies, right? Having this kind of thing
Yeah.
to just be present where it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be us and that time given to you, that time given to others, and being specific. I think the one thing that the pandemic gave us is reminding us that distance is not the least thing that separates us. And so jumping into a Zoom with someone is meaningful, right? Because the one
Mm-hmm.
thing I can never get back is time. So
Mm-hmm.
having those minutes be used for you, I think is just fantastic. Like, yeah, I know we all would love to be next to each other, but when we can't, let's zoom it up. Let's
Yeah.
go back to that. Like,
Yeah.
I loved how crafty people got with meeting during the pandemic. I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean? There's virtual game nights and there's
Yeah.
actually websites dedicated to it. Let's
Yeah.
do that. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
the other way I think about it is just some ways to connect. Another, because like I said, I'm a Detroit girl and music's my jam.
Yes, I was gonna say,
Create.
like, tell me about the music. I want to go
Oh,
back, go
yes.
back to that.
So, one of my favorite things, and I use this for anxiety reducing work anyway. So, this is just my jam any day of the week. But during the holiday season, when we know we're going to go to somebody's house and it's going to be a little tense, introduce the idea of creating a playlist and everybody can chip in. So somebody would be like,
Mm.
oh, this is all John's music. You can be like,
Yeah.
nope, this is a family thing. Anybody can send a song. You create the playlist. And what we do from there is it goes on. Now, the benefit is putting songs on there that you do like, that you know are automatic anxiety reducers. So at any point in the time while that playlist is going, you're reducing anxiety song is in there.
Mhm.
So now you have music playing and it's a great introduction. It's a distraction, right? And we're used to it
Mhm.
because it's in the music, it's in the grocery stores, it's in the malls.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere you go, there's music playing. Why? Because it allows for people to settle down. It's
Mhm.
distracting, it's
Mhm.
easing. And
Mhm.
with that, we can take that right into our own living rooms. Hey, I got this really cool playlist. I'm going to bring my little baby speaker, or if you can tap into somebody's speaker,
Yeah.
allow that energy to go on, and it is a great connection. And now we have really good memories associated with these songs. Everybody can
Yeah.
have that playlist. And so it's one of those gifts that keeps on giving. And you can be like, okay, if anybody wants to add to last year's playlist, now that becomes a new tradition that
Mm-hmm.
your family is built into, again, to connect and allow for you to have emotional safety, mental safety, and some disruptors when things get tense. And, I don't know if Mariah Carey
Like
comes
turn
on,
up. Yeah.
turn it up. Yes, we can stop doing what we're
Yeah.
doing and like jam a little bit. So
Yeah.
I know for us growing up, Donny Hathaway this Christmas, I don't care
Mm.
what I'm doing. When that song comes on, it's instantaneous joy and we're moving.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's one of the things that I think is a great cheat code into the programming of planning for a good time, anticipating the
Mm.
joy to come, because you're sitting waiting for your song to come up, and it doesn't matter if Uncle such and such is going to come with this creepy such and such. When your
Right.
song comes on, you can be like, all right, Unc, I got to dance to this.
Right.
Like, I'm
Right.
done.
Right.
So
Right.
it's just a great way to get out of a conversation without even having to talk about it, because I'm just going to go dance. I don't
Right.
need to address you.
Right.
I'm going to move right into the living room. And so it gives us that peace and escapability.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And it's such a nice other option too, like you said, that it doesn't have to be a conversation because those are important, like your little elevator pitch, your little like, here's what I'm going to say or do. But that still takes a lot of directness that sometimes we don't feel comfortable doing. It's not safe to do. We don't have the energy for. So I love this idea of having the music be your magic power, you're out, but it also is a connector
Mhm.
and it does do so many things, right? Like I don't know anyone that just like hates music and I don't want to know that person anyways. But I think universally it's been around for forever because it does something for us. It's important. We need that. And yeah. And if you ever think of like a good party you go to, and it's a skill though, like to create a good playlist. And so I like the idea of everyone getting to participate. My husband is very good at this. He's like the guy. He's like, he just thinks he's a DJ in his second life, but anywhere we go, they're always like, is Taylor here? Does he have his playlist? Because but he has a gift for that because I listen to like just the things I like it, but it's not
Mhm.
a good like connector set. So
Right.
he could create it for everyone with them in mind. But I like this idea of everyone getting to collaborate and learning some new music, and there's some favorites in there, and that's such a
Exactly.
fun, what a fun like you said, tradition you can create and memories and experiences. So
Exactly. So I just think we need that elbow space to move. And so, I think about the other side of what the survival is, right? Because during the holidays, we know we lose people. We might lose
yeah.
friends, and that might be living, we aren't necessarily friends with John anymore. And,
Right.
John used to be the, potato salad maker,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
you have, you lost a parent or a friend or a sibling or someone, right? And so the other side to surviving and going from survive to thrive is having time to acknowledge
Mm,
the grief that we feel. And the reason why I
yeah.
talk about that anxiety, grief, trauma, and depression, again, I refer to them as new kids on the block. So if you hear that,
You know what we're saying.
that idea of it's okay to acknowledge we're sad and to have a moment of support and peace, right? Escape into something else that kind of gives us joy. And when I say escape, it's not like run and hide. It's more like, again, that idea of permission to say what you need to say, because once we acknowledge it, we can bring that in and we can let it go. So it's a practice of releasing. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sad mom isn't here for dinner. I'm sure she would love the potatoes. Let's talk about bringing this, that kind
Yeah.
of thing in. And then you might have a memory and being free to remember,
Mm,
being
mm-hmm,
free to have a feeling. And one of
mm-hmm.
the other things I talk about is set a feeling intention for dinner. If you want to feel happy, you know what you're going to do. You're going to block things that make you
Right.
unhappy or that
And
are
just be
stressful,
yeah.
and just be happy, right? Or it's like, hey, I want to feel content during dinner. So if somebody comes in and they're like, do you know what Janet said? You know what? I don't know what she said, but right now I don't even care what she said
Yeah.
in this moment. Let's see if we can reroute, because it sounds like what she gave you is some stress.
Yeah.
And let's focus on what being content feels like. So sometimes I love a good redirector, which is like, hey, I'm sitting in this kind of energy and I'd like to use it. It's like smiling when you work out. It doesn't necessarily seem ideal, but the moment you do it, the
Makes
workout
it
gets
better.
easier.
Yep,
So
it's true.
it's
You're
like,
always like, damn you, instructor, when they're like, just smile. And you're like, "Fuck, fine, okay." The
like
pulses don't feel as bad, I guess.
right. Exactly. The moment where my yoga teacher would be like, and then look of contentment. And I'm like, okay, fine that. Easy smile.
Yeah.
So I like to bring those moments into, and again, it's right back into that feeling thing. You're not going to escape that tension and you're not going to escape that sadness. But when we identify it and we associate it, it's okay to pull in another memory. And so I also think that's the benefit of like a playlist or a color. I know one of my friends' families, everybody likes the pressure of these matching pajamas. And so she's like, I hate matching pajamas because I don't have a boyfriend and I'm the only person that has my little solid pajamas. And I was like, well, let me tell you what you should wear. She said, whatever you want. Okay. I don't care if 97 people in the room have matching pajamas
You do you,
and you
girl.
decide you want to wear a cat suit, honey, put the cat suit on, put your little Santa
Yeah.
eyeballs, do whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
because in those moments of survival, your comfort zone work is there. So I always laugh because I was like, we all have these emotional supports, right? Pets and things. And so behind me is my emotional support sweater. So when I'm in the middle of a therapy day or something's going on, I'm like, hold on, let me grab my emotional support sweater because it's so cozy
Yeah.
and so fluffy that I'm like, I just want to be wrapped in a hug by something I have, but I don't want nobody to touch me.
Right,
Right. So it's kind of one of
right.
those things like, I don't need your hug, but this gives
But
me a
I can do
feeling
it
of being
myself.
hugged.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we take those difficult moments
Mm.
and give them life. The same with boundaries. I always say boundaries are really hard, but really they're just like your public facing coping skills.
Yeah.
So when I talk about boundaries, I tell people it shouldn't happen once you get to the party. If you got a deal breaker, you need to know what that is so that
Yeah.
it doesn't happen, right? We have our red, our
Yeah.
yellow, our greens. And if
Mm-hmm.
you know Auntie so and so always hits your red light,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's one of those things where sometimes I ask who's coming to the party. And I know Auntie's coming in there. And so I might have some safety or emergency exit strategies. Hey,
Yeah.
if you see Auntie coming my way, I need somebody to run interference, right? Let's get a
Yeah.
Heisman Trophy moment. Somebody knocks that out. And then somebody's interfering for us.
Yeah.
So get your support team.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Get your
Yeah.
supports. Like
Yeah.
whoever they may be, cousin, aunties, sisters, have those folks come in and help. And so another way to turn that survival into thriving during the holidays for me.
Yeah. And I also love this idea of just going back to the shoulds. It's okay if you don't like this time of year. It's okay if it's not the best time of year for you. It's okay if this next 5 years are what they are and it's more I got to get through
Mhm.
it. But within that, there's the both and. You also could find moments of joy or contentment or peace or comfort. And so it's instead of it having to fit some narrative, I think a lot of even what we've talked about in some of the past weeks as well is just really identifying what your values and vision for the season are this year. Every year is going to be different
Mhm.
and choosing that. And then like what needs to happen to kind of fit into that journey.
Absolutely.
And I think these are some really excellent tips and strategies of how to actualize that plan. And it helps to just really meet a lot of different people wherever they might be, because it isn't one size fits all. And we all have our own shit we're coming into this with and our own backstories and our own stuff. And so we need
Mhm.
lots of options and permissions and thoughts and getting creative, but ultimately we do know, right? Like we do know
Mhm.
ourselves best and just trusting that and listening to that and then giving that permission slip to ourselves to make it happen. Like you said, like the villain guy, be yourself authentically and just keep living that because this is your life. You deserve to live it well for you, not for everyone else. So
Excellent. Absolutely. Like that's it. I mean, like a perfect summation to just give yourself permission to live. I think we just always live in the shadows of someone else. And I'm like, I
tired.
don't subscribe to that anymore.
No.
And, these first round of holidays, and the reason why I do a lot of work around grief. And I know I lost my mom in like the summer, about 7 years ago.
Mm.
And one of the things, the first set of holidays, I had no juice. It was like, can we get to Christmas? And I always laugh because my dad and his sweetheartism was like, I gotta put up this tree. And I don't know where my dad found this tree. It was like the most Charlie Brown Christmas tree ever. And I was like, Dad, I love that you pulled this together. But bro, never bring that
Also
tree
like,
out
no,
again. I was like,
no.
your wife, if she would have seen that tree, like mom would have been like, sir,
She's
absolutely
rolling over
not.
in her grave.
Exactly. She was
What's
like,
happening
what is
here?
that? Like,
Yeah,
what? Right. So
yeah.
we always have the joke. We're like, no more Charlie Brown trees. And so that became, again, even though it was like in a moment of sadness, we all
Yeah.
have like gotten our juicy tree. And so
Mm.
it was just a moment that could be right attached to a memory, because growing up, Charlie Brown Christmas, Great Pumpkin, like these were moments that became
Yeah,
it, that
yeah,
were for us
yeah,
changing, right? So it took that moment of mom not being here and to bringing her right into the memory
yeah.
of that Christmas. And so I think that's also where I like to have a little fun, is people don't have to be forgotten because they're gone. And
No.
so allowing them to live a little bit with us in our next new set of memories is
Mm-hmm.
also a freedom you deserve. So it's
Mm-hmm.
given that presence to be there. And every time we laugh about that Christmas, we love, I always miss my mom, but I always love that she would have totally looked at that tree with a side eye
Oh
like,
my
sir, put that thing down.
I taught you
Like,
better.
it's
What are you doing here? What are we doing
like,
here?
I spent 40 years educating you, sir. What are we doing?
What's going
So
on?
it's just exactly that moment. So give even the people who are gone, let's give them a chance to
Yeah.
also be a part, of our story, and
Mm-hmm.
moving into those next memories, because they deserve it too. And that's another set of freedom I just like to have in my holiday.
Yeah. No, I love that. My grandma passed not this August, the one before, but she always wore these like sweaters. She had like sets to Christmas. And so when we were going through her house, my sister and I each took one, and I've worn it. I wore it last Christmas. I'll probably wear it again this Christmas, but it's like
Mhm.
she's still there, like she's not there
Yep.
wearing it, but her sweater is there and it will live on. And yeah, it makes me a little tearful thinking about it. But it is such an important, like, even though it can be both feelings, but it's still so important. Like the feeling's there. So like let's bring it in a loving way, in a choice way, and capitalize on that. It doesn't have to be this thing I'm shoving away or trying to pretend isn't happening, because that doesn't make sense either. So yeah, no, I
Exactly.
love that. I love that.
Exactly. They are happening. They are there. And so,
Yeah.
I just love that kind of inclusion and the freedom to be, because it's always the unspoken person in the room. And I love that sweater. Like, I love that the minute you said it, I was like, oh, this just makes me happy. Like the story will go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, again, that pose and like celebrating grandma, like you guys know. And now this gets to be the story for whoever's generation comes next. Like
Right.
we get to experience it, and whoever parent it was,
Yeah. Yeah.
they get to celebrate that their mom had that juice too, and that you guys are really embodying it. So it
Yeah.
becomes like just again, that collective warm hug, right? Like grandma's not there to hug you, but grandma's always there to hug you.
Yeah. 100%. No, I love that. Well, this has been such a great conversation, and we could keep going, but for the interest of time, what would be like the biggest takeaway, juicy wisdom bomb you kind of want to leave folks with? You've given us a lot, but just as that final ta-da.
I love it. So the final thing I would say is keep something close for yourself. So I always have something that makes me happy. And so it is, maybe it's a cherry Coke, maybe it's a cookie, maybe it's your favorite mint, whatever it is. You don't get this time of year often. So this is that moment to have close at hand
Mm,
something that makes you smile instantly. So for me, I'm like, I am going to keep a little, they're the like a little Jolly Rancher. I like my little Apple Ranchers.
love it.
So this time of year, I will keep, a few of those around. I also love dark chocolate covered raisins, and I do not eat them often,
Mm,
but they are something that right in this time of year I
it's
love
just that.
having. Exactly. So I would say keep something close that you know is instantaneously joy bringing, where there's no work. I don't want you to have to think twice about it. Make sure if you're going to visit family, it's there. And if you're at home alone, super make sure it's there. Uh, to have that presence, to have somebody say, you know, hey, if I'm down, if I send you a number 2 text, if you just get the number 2, you know I'm sad. And
Yes.
so send me a pick me up. So it's just kind of doing that prep. I always like to say, have something that is available for instantaneous joy. It could be one of many, but have it present.
I love it. I love it. And then just to leave everyone with, is there anything you have that you are offering or promoting or doing that you want to let folks know about before we say goodbye?
Excellent. Absolutely. Well, if you come to my website, so lcnwellness.com, you'll see a resources pop up. If you want to get a couple more of those juicy anxiety reducing tips, I have a resource sheet that I send out, and it's 3 of my favorite tips for reducing anxiety.
I
The
love that.
music is one, so that's available. And if you find yourself there, you will see the store. The store includes my Eliminate Barriers and Accomplish Your Goals workbook. I freaking love it. It's 11 activities. And so sometimes when you get therapeutic material, it's too much to digest and then you don't do it.
Yeah.
So this one's a hot 11. It goes through giving you a story, giving you a face, coping skills, communication. So I will say, find yourself in that LCN Wellness store. It is a wealth of resources available for you. And my last thing that I'm promoting is straight gratitude. So thank you for this moment, these minutes, and for every listener's ear. You could have been doing anything else, but you chose to sit and listen to us. And so for that, my last gift is absolute gratitude.
Well, thank you so much. It's been truly a pleasure. I am excited to be able to share all of this wealth of wisdom with the folks listening, and I appreciate your time as well. So thank you, and I hope everyone has a happy holiday, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.